And we are live. Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending where you are. This is SIG API Machinery for Kubernetes bi-weekly meeting. Today is November 1st, 2023. We have a small agenda today, but we still wanted to meet and go through it. So the first topic is from Cameron, and I will give you the spotlight to talk about it.
Sure, thank you. So this is a pull request for the autoscaler, and I know that Mo already left some comments, and we may already have a path forward based on his comments, but I still wanted to bring it up here so that you guys didn't think I was like hiding it after I got some good review comments. Basically, the problem is that the cluster autoscaler and the cluster API supports a configuration where the cluster autoscaler is managing clusters outside of the cluster it's actively running inside of. So there's multiple kube configurations that we're dealing with. So that means that the built-in default client Go transport handling to refresh the service account bearer token doesn't do the job because we're actually reading an entire kube config in from a secret and not just mounting the Kubernetes client configuration from like the service account bearer token. Specifically, the problem is related to the cluster API. The kube config bearer token from AWS has a very short lifespan. So the token gets refreshed inside of the secret constantly by the controller every time it reconciles. But if the cluster autoscaler doesn't reread the kube config file or the bearer token within it, then its connection to the cluster collapses after a few minutes when that token expires. So that's the problem we're trying to solve. And there's various nasty workarounds, creating long-lived service accounts and whatnot as a workaround. But we really wanted to just have the cluster API and the cluster autoscaler play nice with each other and do the right thing. And I wanted to ask the SIG API Machinery if this is the right approach to refresh a bearer token embedded inside of a Kubernetes config object. So that's a bit of the context around this change. And Mo suggested some changes to the cluster API side to basically add a second item inside of the secret that is just the bearer token, so that that part could be mounted as a file in the cluster autoscaler. And then the built-in service account bearer token transports would be able to refresh that correctly. They're able to refresh that type of token if the Kubernetes config object is set up correctly, but they're not able to refresh, say, a kube config passed in by file right now.
Yeah, so the upshot there is reshape the kube config so that it uses the file and the refresh happens for you automatically. And as I recall, the reasoning for that was that if you reread an entire kube config file, there's no guarantee that you'll even be running the same stanza, right? Because the kube config says use this or use that. And so if instead you read a kube config, you get references to files, we auto reload those files like client certificates. We don't do CA bundles, but we'll be happy to take a patch to do that if you wanted to, and this file. So
yeah, and I saw those comments from Mo, and that sounded like a really good idea, and a simpler way to do this, because then we don't have to have all the reloading code here. It takes advantage of the existing code that already exists in the API machinery if we can leverage that. So I think that just means that this needs additional work on the cluster API side to change the contents of that secret so that it has the additional values that we need. So I can follow up and do that work and then circle back.
Sounds good. And you have David here, who is also very knowledgeable on the topic. So I think looks like Mo and David are on the same line. Sounds good. Okay, very good. Well, I'm glad that was quick. The only other thing that I have for today is a small advertisement. So next week is KubeCon North America. If you are going, SIG API Machinery is going to have a maintainers track. I put a link here. So it's going to be divided in two small sessions. The first one is going to be Leila, who is going to be talking of an overview of the SIG and how to organize contributions and what do we own, and an introduction to the SIG. And the second is going to be Stefan, who is going to be talking about building a generic API server. So if you're curious about any of those topics or you want to show your support, hope to see you there. And hopefully say hi and enjoy the sessions. That's all I have for today. I know it was code freeze yesterday, so a lot of people has been working long hours to make it to the code freeze. Thank you to everybody. And if nothing else, we can call it a meeting here. Sounds good. Very good. Well, safe travels if you're going to Chicago. Remember, it was snowing there, so make sure you get your coat or your jacket, like David. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.